Welcome to Politics and Tactics. We got a great show for you. We have Danny Stratton on, a Camden captain who then left Camden to become a Philadelphia new recruit firefighter. He's got military experience in the United States Army. He has a college degree, and I've worked with some tough urban firefighters. I can tell you one thing. Danny Stratton is the toughest firefighter I've ever seen. I've seen him fall out of a window, get up, brush it off, and not even complain. I've seen him in a fire, only one fire, but it only takes one fire to know whether someone's a firefighter or not. Danny Stratton is an unbelievable, great firefighter, tough as nails, and a great instructor. I hope to see him back at FDIC. Danny Stratton, welcome to Politics and Tactics. It's an honor to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks, Frank. Thanks for having me, bro.
So you retired from Camden as an officer, and then you went to Philadelphia. What was the transition like?
Oh, Frank. Oh, man. I had to prepare myself for it because I had the idea in my head years ago. I was actually down Fort Lauderdale, and I had, long story short, I sat down and had lunch with the Car One and all his deputies at Fort Lauderdale, and they're like, we don't have an age limit, and that's what got me starting thinking. And right off the bat, right off the gate, no way, I could be a recruit and this and that and talk down to. But then I started thinking about it, marinating about it, and looking around and like, so what? What's wrong with it takes 5 minutes to clean a toilet, mop the floor, and go to fires, and best job in the world, and it's just like I had to let go of that. Like it's like an insecurity or like an ego. It's just like, so what? And especially as I get older, like I don't look at rank much anymore. I don't really, I like learned in the fire service, like rank don't tell me nothing about anybody. It's about your character. Most of what other people say about you. And of course, if I work with you directly, what I observe you doing, because I value being a fireman. I mean, being like a fire administrator, stuff like that, guys that climb the ladder, to each his own, everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. And, it's just certainly, and I certainly prepared as best I could. My first tour in the fire academy, I was like, what the hell was I thinking? I was like, all right, this is kind of a bad idea, right? But I adapted. And the best thing I could do was, most of my life, I've always been the person everybody kind of forgets about, and I could hide easily. And actually, one of my platoon mates in the fire academy, young guy, Molosky, I remember them saying to him one time, like one of the instructors goes, Molosky, who the hell are you? When did you get here? And it's like two or 3 weeks or 3 months into it, fire academy, because he's just a low key. And I was like, man, I wish I was him. I couldn't be low key because I was the second oldest guy, for one, and two. After a while, they found out who I was, And so it was kind of hard for me to lay low because I prefer that way. I'm not really too much one for the limelight, and I knew I'd had my struggles because I had, some physical limitations. I have, a cardiac condition. I've had pain management issues where I've gone to pain management doctors and stuff. And so it's certainly a challenge, but I was already physically fit, gym rat and everything. So that transition wasn't too bad, but the struggle was, physical was struggle. I mean, the first 4 to 5 months was EMT. So that wasn't too bad as far as physically. We did very little fire stuff, a little touching the air packs, touching the hose, the ladder, a little bit, not much. And struggle for me, well, I was concerned because I was, other than being a medic in the Army, I was never got my EMT. In Camden, we didn't do bus work. We didn't do ambulance work. So, I was concerned because I'm dyslexic and I have my learning disabilities. And one thing I noticed about getting old, you still them learning disabilities still creep up on you. So I was very concerned. So I pretty much locked down. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Lay low. Let these young guys be leaders. Bigger, stronger than me. And we had Colosso and another guy, Sam. They were big, young kids, tall kids that led the platoon and overall was successful. When I got to the fire side, if I didn't know any better, last place I would have wanted to go on is a ladder truck because my body was so beat. Because one thing, the Philadelphia Fire Department, one thing I will say about the Philadelphia Fire Department, they pounded advancing hose lines and ladders into you. And I was like, I looked, because my shoulders were shot, and I was like, I looked dread at ladders. And like, if I didn't know any better, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to go to a ladder truck, you know? You know, but thank God my body healed and I can throw ladders, you know, as long as I have to throw them every freaking hour, 2 hours. But it was humbling, very humbling. Getting old sucks. I seen this in some of my older gym mates at gyms I worked at, like guys evolve into their 40s and late 40s and 50s, man. Like you break down, it's just coming. And my first 2 to 3 weeks in the fire academy, I'd be running in a whole class run. I'd be in the top half running. About a month later, I'm in the back half, right? And every girl except for one in the class passed me. And you talk about being humiliated and just really getting the ego check, and you know, really like wow, just like you know, just amazing, you know, physiology and growing old, and you know, it's inevitable, and you gotta let go of it. You know, it's that's the thing. Like, I think I prepared as best I could, but still, like the realities of you know being an older guy and everything, and my concern was the National Register EMT. I was because when I was actually a medic in the Army, I had the opportunity to take the EMT test. You had to have. I remember like 95 or better, and they would let you take the National Register. Back then, nobody recognized the National Register. This is 1993, and and you know I studied hard as best I could. I walked out with 93 grade point average, so I was allowed to take it by the Army. But on my own, I took it once or twice. No, I took it twice, and a 1 point failed by 1 point twice. You know, and then. And I was like, damn, man. And then after I gave up because nobody recognized it. I even called the state of New Jersey. The time I was in Jersey. And they were like, well, no, we're not. You know, I was like, why should I break my balls getting it? Because it don't mean anything. Now, look at it. You know, everybody recognizes it and such. And so it's kind of like a redemption thing because I know
Danny,
like,
what a jump. I mean, you always sell yourself short. You're very humble, but the fact is, you got a bachelor's degree, and
yeah,
here you struggled a little bit, but now at this age, you start over. It's so tough to start
yeah,
over, even when you're a young guy. You know, I was in Bethesda, Chevy Chase, Maryland, and I had to go through the academy all over again in New Haven,
yeah,
but I was 23 years old. I can't imagine having to do it now. And, you know, you break everybody's stones about promoting up because you want to still go into
yeah,
fires.
yeah,
That's why people promote up is because we get old. I remember when I was taking my first lieutenant's test, my brother, I said, listen, I don't even think I'm going to take it because I was driving the truck. Our crew split in New Haven. I was happy on the roof. I was loving it. And my
roof
brother
line.
goes, you're not going to be 26 forever, kid. You know, you can't think. He goes, how many young guys are on the roof in New Haven? I go,
Yeah.
pretty much all of them. He's like, yeah, there's a reason for that. Take
Yeah.
the so, but you got through it. You got through the
Yeah.
academy. And
It
that's
was,
funny that you tried to be invisible because that's what everybody tries to do is to be that gray man. I remember Josh Miller, who teaches at FDIC. He came up from DC to get hired in New Haven. And an instructor called me and said, you know, Miller's in your class. And we always used to yell at him, hey, Miller, get your fat ass up the tower. So I go, oh, that's beautiful. So during PT, they're running up the stairs and he thought he was kind of invisible. And I go, Miller, get your fat ass up the tower. And he goes, oh, so he knew. So there's no way you're hiding. Everybody knows you in
yeah.
Jersey.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah,
You've been,
I mean, Philly's a big department. You got, you know, some people probably didn't hear me. Plus, like, you know, it's, you know, some people just don't follow fire engineering stuff.
right.
But a lot of guys did know me, you know, and the guys that didn't know me heard from the guys that knew me. And even guys were on the job. And actually, one of my best friends I used to be a roommate with, he was actually a coordinator in the class that was going on before our class. When we came on the class, he was the coordinator. My friend's a lieutenant, Stephen Palumbo. He was running the coordinator of that class. They were halfway through when we came on. And so he knew me. So the word did get over, you know, like, well, right away, there was one instructor that said, hey, I knew you are, you know, older guy too. He's like, you keep, and he was actually old when he went to the Philly Fire Academy too. He's like, hey, lay low, you know, old. I wasn't the oldest guy. You old guys stick together. And then, but my platoon leader, or my platoon leader, he was a firefighter detailed at the Fire Academy. He didn't know for a while. And he's, oh, you're holding out on me. And honestly, I'd rather not be the platoon leader. I know I was like in his crosshairs, and of course, you want to platoon? Like, of course, I'm going to say no. I'm like, yes, sir, yes, sir. And not for not. I'm glad he picked Anthony Galasso, big, strong kid, Army guy, and I was like, yeah, he's the way to go. Younger generation, he's 28. Has people's respect because he's crushing PT and everything, and you know, so it went from there. And I was just happy with my role. I was like, hey, man, I'm coming out with be fireman. I'm like, my, like I like some instructors try and crack me and and like I would say, I'm nobody here past that gate. I'm nobody in this gate. When I come in through this gate, I'm nobody.
And that's the right attitude. What I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious about is when I went through New Haven's Academy, I was already instructor, I was already teaching, but going through the academy again made me a better firefighter. There was no doubt about I learned a couple new things, but it really honed my skills, and I think it made me a better instructor at the end. I can't imagine going through the academy. Not that you're old, but at your age, you were a captain in Camden, had a lot of fire duty, and now you're starting over. Did you find that the experience, while I know it was kind of dreaded as you were going through it, but at the end of it, when you look back, do you think it made you a better firefighter?
Yeah, better person, better firefighter. It's definitely learning different perspectives, learning more about yourself. Learning about the new generation. Because to work with, and certainly like the newer instructors, and of course, the whole time I'm there, I'm critiquing the guard. I would do this, I want to do that, but kept it to myself. And keep your mouth shut, at least not until you get, and I still haven't opened up yet. It's just like I got 2 years in fire company, almost 3 years now total, and so, it's just, I worked on shutting myself down before because when I was for 3 years, I was retired. I jumped after a whole full year doing nothing. I worked part time for Woodbury City, New Jersey, small, teeny career fire department, one engine, and I was a part timer and I was running there, and right away, the kids know who I was there, and they're like, oh, and I was like, yo, man, I'm just here to be a fireman. I mean, and I don't even want to drive because, but if you want me, I'll drive, because I'm the old guy. But I just want, I don't, and like some of these young kids that come up and because it was, they didn't really, they had one officer, but he wasn't always working. Sometimes it's just two full timers and me and a part timer, or a full timer and me and another part timer. And I'm like, seeing like a young kid who's been around for 5 years. Get up there, man. Good. Ride that front seat. Don't worry. Talk on the radio. Don't worry. You be there. I'll open my mouth. It's not that hard of a job. It's just.
And that's awesome because you're able to build them and you realize what the job is. And I've always said, the city firefighters out there, you're going to fires more often with everybody that has a job. You go to work in a small department or volunteer department. You don't know who's showing up. You may be going to less fires, but I almost think it's more dangerous. I think the city firefighter got a greater chance of getting injured. And it seems like the volunteers got a better chance of getting killed. But I do have to say today, in our hearts and our prayers are out with his family. Camden lost the firefighter in the line of duty. I think he went to the funeral today. If you'd like to talk about him, I know you know about him, but it's really sad. And it just goes to show you that on this job, a tenth of a second can change your life.
Yes. I mean, and that was just routine maintenance. Howard Bennett, fellow classmate. He was like holding on. He was, I was wondering too, and why he's still there and didn't retire. Everybody has their reasons, and he.
There's never a good time to leave the fire service. That's just the fact.
Oh yeah. And my brother, he's still there. He's a battalion chief, and he said that they both looked at each other and said, "What are you still doing here? What are you still in here?" Howard Bennett, and he said, I'm on the bubble, but if certain people leave, I may get promoted and get his year-end pension and go. And he was a solid guy. Like he wasn't like us aggressive maniacs. He was that guy that stepped behind you and thinking, because he was like the oldest guy in our class, actually. Now I think about it, he barely made the cut, and he smart. He's a carpenter by trade. He did everything. He worked on machines. He loved the fireboat. He's really good with the fireboat, and very humble, very easygoing. Not the type of guy who would get in a fight with. And he right there. And I never heard anybody talk bad about him doing terrible on fires or anything. Just a solid guy, and a solid, wife, kids, raised kids. Kids are older, and and just something, a morning check, I could see it. Like, as I worked in that company, I first got promoted, and I take the fireman up there, and I'd had a guy on when I was there who loved the boat, and the boat was his niche. And, Cat, can we go up, before lunch and check the boat? Yeah, let's go, go up, check it, run it, do what they have to do. And that's all he's doing. And somehow, from what we understand, he fell in somehow between the ice and the boat, and he didn't resurface. But, it's just a sad day today. It was, I was, hard going in, but it was nice. Would help to seeing everybody I haven't seen in a while. A lot of guys, like out of 34 guys in my class, 6 are left, one being my brother, one was Howard. And, seeing a lot of them there, and seeing somebody, like, there's so many new faces. I'm like, God, Jesus, it's like all these young guys. And, like, I was like that one time too. And, and then Kansas have been last couple winters. When I left the last couple years out, it was just quiet. And now the last 3 winters, they've been rocking. I'm like, geez, what the heck's going on over there? It's it's God bless Howard, hopefully, and his family, and we heal. And his wife had a beautiful speech. You could tell she had it together and nailed a good speech, and, didn't even drop an eye tear. She probably cried all her tears,
Yeah. And everybody who's viewing this, there's nobody who goes to work who thinks they're not coming home, or the volunteer going to run the call, who think they all have plans for the weekend, plans to do something with their family. You just got to be a little bit vigilant, and, it can happen to anybody, and God rest his soul, and, protect his family. Sorry you had to go through that. What's the job difference between Camden and Philadelphia, like the size of the department for people a lot of people, surprisingly, Danny, aren't familiar with Camden, but they catch a lot of fire. They're really one of the most respectable departments for the amount of work.
Like, put this way, Camden is, when I go on, it was, not counting whom, it was probably 80,000. Now it's probably, last I checked, and I was still on a job, was 72,000. Things just keep decaying. It's a decaying city. And
it's like the East Coast Detroit is what I compare it to, because you weren't really supported with the tax base for, right? You guys were always piecing everything together.
Well, right now, it's, if you do some latest news, the apparatus they're driving right now should have been not even reserve pieces. They should be retired, let alone being reserve pieces, let alone being frontline pieces. I mean, so they're, over there with duct tape and a pocket knife, really going to fires. And they've had it was a year or two ago, maybe, and a fatal fire too. First in engine, stretched the line, flowing water, kaput, engine shut down, the pump shut down. Crazy. And but, like, back to your question, comparison, like, right now, I'd say when I got on, it was about 250 man position department in Camden. And then, unfortunately, when your population goes down, we lost some companies and stuff, and we're down to probably, we're probably at 200, 205 personnel. And Philly, we got 3,000 firemen in suppression, and we're 1.7 million. And what happened in Philly, like, I guess throughout my career in Camden, we're descending. Well, Philly went from like 1.5 million pop to 1.7 million. And with the population came some money and came some good decision makers. And, like, it's in Philly, because I remember when I first got on the job, Philly was just like Camden. Terrible apparatus, terrible firehouse. Then we had a little bit of a blip where some of the funding helped us got stuff, and Philly started up and coming, and it still came. I mean, Philly still getting good apparatus and money. And, like, I even told some of the young guys to come on and say, hey, man, you're coming in good times, and you got a long career, and get ready for the bad times, because it's par for the course when it comes to, the inner cities and the struggles of fire departments. But right now, it's nice. The Philly Fire Department, everything's on the up and up. Equipment, apparatus. When I went to Ladder 5, where I'm assigned.
So you ended up going to a ladder company?
Yeah. Like I said, if I didn't know any better, if it was my first time, I would be like, fuck this. I hope I don't go to a ladder. These ladders, I'm picking them up and 35. and they're breaking our balls while we're crying. You know, I was like, if I didn't know any better, I would not want to be on a ladder truck. I'm like, yo, this ladder stuff sucks, you know. And but it's but as I'm back to my saying, but the yeah, like when I first got to ladder 5, it was a brand new Suffren tiller ladder, and my very first call on shift was a working fire. Working fire. And here I didn't know. Like we get there, and the senior man, who's actually my age, says to me, "Yo, man, it's its first fire, the truck, the ladder truck." I'm like, "Really? Yeah, we got it like 3-4 weeks ago or something. 2 weeks before I walked in the door." You know, I was like, "Oh wow, that's cool." You know, I walk in the door, and it's great because you know, me, I like aggressive culture and stuff, and actually, I was lying a little bit. The first run I went on it was a box, but it wasn't. It was a dwelling fire, but it wasn't working. But
Never let the truth get
it
in
was,
the way.
it was
of
on the
good
other
story,
shift.
Danny.
I got there early. You know, I got there like an hour early, hour and a half early, because I like to come to work, especially being a new guy. You better come early. So, and like it was a shift change. So all of a sudden, the truck's got 10 guys on it, and I'm looking around like this. Yeah, all right. This like I like this. Guys are wanting to work. You know, even with the shift change, guys are jumping on the truck. You know, it's not like they're moving out of the way. You know, and I was like, God,
Everybody wants to go to a fire.
yeah, all right, good. We're here. And we got
So,
back. Yeah.
Before we get into the fires and some like lessons and tips for fires, what's your tip for somebody starting the academy? Say who wasn't a firefighter, who's getting hired, starting a fire academy. You got any besides try to be invisible? Do you got anything any gem you want to pass on?
So much. Well, you know, just adjust your lifestyle. Like have no life. You know, have life and nothing else. Like especially if you have a wife and kids, let them know, hey, look, the next 2 months, 10 months, how long your fire academy is. Look, I need to put my all into this, you know, especially if you have something like National Register EMT. And, you know, it's just you got to give it your all. You got to keep your focus. You know, it's a shame seeing some, you know, cadets have struggles with wives. And like actually my buddy who was older than me, you know, him and I took to each other because he's like, he was 2 years older than me. He was having, you know, problems at home, and thank God he got through it. I helped him out a couple of times. I had him come sleep or, you know, come stay at my place and all. And it's, you know, get home straight, try and have everybody at home understand, you know, what you're going to be going through and put your all into, because especially once you get on, you got the shift work, you're home a lot, you know, your daughter, you tell your daughter, hey, 10 months in prime, so I'm big up to you, you know?
Yeah, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but you got to do the work.
You're going to get sick of seeing me when I get out of this fire cab, you know? And it's just like, you know, there's time, you know, you can get time off. You can swap shifts with guys and stuff. It's just like, it's worth every struggle, you know, it's worth every bit of blood and sweat that you can put into it, you know, and every bruise you can take.
Now, when you were in Camden, were you on a rescue engine or a truck?
Yeah, well, my first course engine, well, most of my career was in special operations because, like, in a small fire department, you can get there a lot quicker. Especially when I first got in Camden, there was a huge changeover. And when I got there, I was first on an engine, which is the best thing, I think. You know, if you're, and even me, like even me, like coming into a new part, like everybody should go through an engine first. If you get promoted, you should go start at an engine, you know, and work your way back. But
absolutely, 100%. Just because you got success, you were on an engine company as a firefighter, you make it to truck or rescue, you get promoted, go back and make your bones, you know, make that radio report on a couple of first due fires, get a reputation as a good engine boss before moving on. I completely 100% agree with you.
Being in the Army and the Marine Corps, you got to be a basic rifleman, you know, and basically that's a firefighter, you know, being on the engine. And, you know, I was on the engine for a while. Like I remember when I was in Camden, I was probably on every transfer list, you know, because the first company I went to was not as busy as all the other companies. So I was wanting to get out of it and go to the other companies. And probably like in 3 years, I was always on promotion, transfer lists. And finally I was at Engine 7, which was busy in the middle of the city. And I was there for a while. And then a lot of guys, a big promotional list came out, and off the bat, 28 guys got promoted. That's a lot for a department that's 240 positions. 28 guys getting promoted out of firefighter rank. So the rescue company opened up, boom. So all of a sudden, boom, all of us rookies are in there with, like, you know, three and 4 years, and so I got introduced to special ops right away. And back then, the Camden Rescue wasn't like rescues are now. It was basically, rescue truck with vehicle extrication equipment on it, and but one thing is like, it was great going to fires. You don't have to stretch a line and throw a ladder. It's yeah, it's like, I mean, that's and we had the walk box. We're standing up going to fires like that. You can't do that nowadays. That's about great, standing in the back of the box and with the back
And you
door.
don't have the stress on the rescue of where to park. You don't got to get the
Oh, yeah,
hydrant.
yeah,
You don't got
yeah,
to get the front of the
yeah,
building. There's no stress when you
yeah.
run a rescue
It's
company.
and like
It's
I
just
love
fun.
I
Stress
love
on the engine company, stress on the truck.
I love climbing a ladder that somebody else threw. Actually, when I first got on came the rescue we had, it had in the back a 24, and sometimes if we needed, we grab that. That was nice and throw it up, go in. If we couldn't go in through the front door, go up to the windows, vent in or search, what have you, and going in high, as I like to call it. But yeah, it was a cool experience, man. And then when I got promoted the first time, because budget cuts, I got demoted. But when I got promoted, I was signed to engine one where the fireboat was, and then of course I was always trying to get out, and then I went to engine 11, and then I'm trying to think. Oh then the unthinkable happened where we went through the 2008 recession, where throughout the country firemen were getting laid off and demoted. I got demoted, and so went back for a year, and that was fun. I mean, I just in my head not to get too mad because look, I was on a promotional list that never died because civil service rules. You're on a list that pretty much never dies. You'll get re-promoted. It just takes time. And I was fireman again for another year at ladder 2, rescue 1. Like one thing that the city did back then, well, people in charge, they took the ladder down south and a rescue and made them cross the floor. And they're still doing it today,
And Danny, that's an important lesson. And that's one of the reasons why I think you're phenomenal. The fact is, when you got demoted, I remember talking to you, and the fact is, you've suffered a lot of adversity throughout your career, and you never let it take away your passion for wanting to go to
yeah,
fires and doing the best job for the citizens. And too many firefighters across the country. Listen, if you got to, especially you're in a city job, bad things are going to happen to you.
yeah,
There's going to be budget issues. There's going to be politics. The fact
yep.
is, it's how you respond to it that's going to be
Mm-hmm.
that's really going to define you. I remember when I was asked to, after they wouldn't promote me because I was white, when they asked me to go to the training academy to teach the next class, and I said, yeah, sure, I'd be honored to. And everybody was like, why would you do anything for this department? I'm like, do you think the mayor cares if a firefighter knows how to stretch a line or throw a ladder or work on a weekend roof? I go, this is an opportunity to make our job better. And you never got bitter. You only got better each time you went down with grace. Yeah, everybody complains a little bit. That's the fire service. But you did it with grace. And it's a lesson to everybody. Don't let anybody, don't let any politician, don't let any budget issue ever take away your passion to do this job. You're a consummate professional, Danny.
Yeah, it's something like, honestly, at the time, I think it was at the time or maybe just before that happened. I can't quite remember. Lasky's book, Pride and Ownership. I happened to be reading that.
Who's that?
Rick Lasky's book.
I'm just kidding.
I know. So hey, I can see myself doing that too. My brain ain't working too now. Well, I'm like, but and it just certainly reminded, like, remember why you're here. Like, yes, maybe I have a different perspective. I was married with children, but it's just like, you can't beat yourself down because, like, I have a tendency of doing that. Of beating myself down when I make little mistakes in life. Actually, when I took the CAD exam, I beat myself up because I went there and I slipped on the oral, and instead of getting a 5, I got a 3, and like I was kicking ass on my tutor Anthony Avila was my tutor. I was doing so good, and
let's blame Avila. That
and
wasn't you. That was Anthony. I'll make sure he definitely watches this too.
yeah,
If
but like,
Bacuso gave you training, you would have been all set.
because what I was doing, I was obsessing about the written, like the average, like the guys and like top guys, like I kind of knew who was studying and everything. Like a lot of top guys got like 10 wrong on the written, if you got 10 wrong, you're probably easily top 5 or whatever, you know. And I got in my head, I miskeyed 3 questions. I had 7 wrong on the written. You know, that really bumped you up. I kept obsessing about it, but you know what it did? I beat myself up so much when I went to the oral, I had a self-esteem issue. And I did 5. There's 4 questions. I did all 5s and 1 3. You know, because I had a hiccup. Like the way the question was formatted, I didn't answer in that format. You know, and it turns out it just, in a nutshell, just spit out the points. You know, all right, they might gig you for disorganization or something. You know, I just, and I still did. I ranked number 9. You know, I still got promoted and all, but God forbid, I could have.
And what did they call you after that, Captain?
Yeah. But it's just so it's just like I realized, like, you can't beat you gotta let it go. Like I've trouble letting things go, and in turn, when that came down, getting demoted, and like, yo, man, you just gotta calm down. You're forgetting what this job means to you. You gotta, like, think back when you didn't have this job. Like right now, if I looked at myself, like I remember, like, one time I'm going up 95, Interstate 95, and we're going to the fire academy, and I'm driving ladder 5, and I'm going up Interstate 95 in a Philadelphia ladder truck, and I'm driving it. Like, I would never, like, go think back when I was 19, 20 years old, looking at career guys at all when I was a young volunteer, and looking at career guys back then was like looking at, like, what some of these people look at movie stars and stuff, starstruck, and can't imagine. And like you just think back to that time and how that kid would feel, like, thinking about where you are right now, and it's just like, and things will work out, things will pan out. Like, going back to Camden, they rehired the 160 firefighters they laid off. Everybody, I got re-promoted from the year to the day I was demoted. It's, life goes on, and it's still a great career. It's you can't, like, I'm German, and us German, got that attitude. I can beat myself up. It's, don't do it. Life's too short.
You never let that kind of on the outside, because you're always the hard charger, always wanting to just go to fires.
Yeah.
I remember taking your class at FDIC. You're somebody who's passionate. You want to go to fires. Now, how do Philadelphia truck companies operate? So, like in New Haven, 4 people on the truck. If nobody was hanging out a window, we would always split 2 to the roof, 2 to initially start the search. How's Philadelphia operate on a box first due truck?
Now, Philly first in. I'm making sure I got my lingo straight. I get my balls broken. No, first in. This is Philly. So now I got a program. No, first in. But
that's actually a good question. Before you answer that, have you had that problem yet, where the nomenclature is a little bit different? Because I remember when I first became an engine boss, we had an apartment fire, and I got on the radio and I said, I'm stretching a leader line, and I got smoke showing, and the battalion chief, he didn't want to ask me, but he had no idea what a leader line was. So I was bringing a Maryland thing up where I was stretching into the courtyard, the 3.5, and putting a Y on it. They call it something different in New Haven. He got there and he's like, I figured it out, but I had no idea what you were talking about.
Yeah, in Philly, we call that 3 inch to the bag. 3 inch to the bag.
Okay.
Yeah. And where's that? So, what the first in? Well, typically minimum staffing for a Philly ladder is a boss and 4 firefighters.
That's awesome.
We have an extra, but typically we'll get detailed out. Of course, when Manning comes up again, and this time of year, January, we may have an extra guy. But driver and tillerman, they are pretty much outside team and roof. They're kind of like a team. They can split up. My lieutenant's great. He goes, look, I know you don't want to deviate from, like, my last job I was on. I was driving Tim, a newer guy, not a new guy, but a newer guy, engine guy that came into a ladder. We pull up the job, and I said, Tim, I don't think it was much for a roof job. It was a back bedroom fire. I was like, Tim, go up to the roof, check it out. I might come up there with you, And I end up going back, throwing ladders in the back and stuff. But yeah, that's what they pretty much do, roof, throwing ladders. And in Philly, we got a lot of 3 and 4 story, especially where I'm at, 3 and 4 story buildings. I'm actually in the high rise district, but we actually have some short buildings that are 3 and 4 stories high and 2. And I was, so basically throwing ladders. Typically, the uh, the driver and tillman think 35. Think 35. Think the biggest ladder first. Then the other position is called a hook position, inside hook. He obviously has hook. Sometimes the can. I prefer to bring like a Halligan with me too with the hook, and typically through at least generally speaking, ladder the second floor. If it's an end of row, throw another ladder on the side, end of the row of the row homes, and then go in, search for our hook, or may help these search rescue. I like to actually go in through a window, in that position. That's why I like to sometimes bring a Halligan or a flathead axe with me, along with that. And then there's the pack position. Yeah, why is it called pack? Well, back in the day when there was only one air pack on the ladder truck, that guy had the air pack. Well, now the pack's position, he's search and force. He's got the irons with him. Throw him on camera with him. If it's a high rise, bring a hydraulic force entry tool, and he does search, force entry search. The lieutenant pretty much has he can roam to most critical tasks, but he may most likely go with the search guy, help him search, or initially go to the report, go to the rear and get a quick report for the chief. My lieutenant, young guy, he's quick. Like he'll go to, he's already do the report, rear coming, he's back on, he's pretty quick. And
do they do when they're inside searching? You're inside searching. You're also responsible for engine company encouragement as well.
Yes, just help recon assess and stuff. Help pump line if need be too. It's mentioned it's actually in our OPs. It's actually mentioned that the hook guy. It's actually mentioned to help advance hose line if need be. For the engine company. So and that's it in a nutshell for like a residential.
Now, question: when you go in and you're going, say, second floor window, and you go in, are you doing traditional VES, or if the conditions allow, are you continuing your search out of that room on the floor?
As long as I've been doing that, going through windows, and I think it's situation dependent. Like you pop the window, and all of a sudden the engine company's already made progress. Let the room lift, clear more windows, but then you can use your eyes to search. Take a look under the bed. If certain conditions are deteriorating, get that door shut. My experience, like working at Camden and a little bit with Philly now, like engine companies are you got an efficient engine company, you don't have to worry about getting that door. You don't have to worry about getting that door. But given some times, like very few times I had to shut that door. But keep on moving. Keep on moving, and you got water fire, like total ventilation, open the place up. And so.
And you said that's the key. If the engine company is getting water on the fire,
mm-hmm.
then by all means you can continue venting. But if they don't have water on the fire, keep it rich, close that door, so you're not impacting the fire. 100%.
Right. So that's like my experience. Like Philly, done. Let's see, I think I took a couple jobs on overtime in the hook position, but the one I got was on overtime, was in hook spot, and there was a roof deck fire. A lot of roof decks in Philly because I'm in Center City, Philly, so a lot of people have good homes, roof decks on them, and get summertime, get a lot of roof deck fires. So I didn't I threw the ladder. I was like, I don't think I can pile, just going through the front door, instead, but it seems like every time there's a freaking fire, I'm driving. I'm like, damn it! I'm like roof. My responsibility is like consider the roof, ladder, ladder it up, and usually I like put my air pack on, just throw some ladders, then go ahead and do some hooking, opening up.
Do you guys have a 40 or a 50 on your?
Yeah, we have either a 45 or a 50 or 50. I'm sorry, 50. Just 50. Bang. We got one of them. We got typical Philly complement is 50-foot ladder, 235s, 128. 2 16s, a 20, and most ladders have also the extension 20, which is a beautiful piece of equipment, for 2 stories. Yeah, the 20-foot extension ladder. So, and that's pretty much a ladder complement. Plus the main. In Philly, we got all mostly tillers. We're pretty much all the ladder towers gone. We have now the tower scopes. I think and people like break my balls. Like, come Philly don't have the scopes. And we're like, well, we have trouble driving around the city in tillers, let alone.
The city was designed before the
Yeah,
revolution.
like we have our ladder to the north of us. That's a scope, and it can't. It comes down to South Philly and where we're at, especially when it's during the day, or we go into the Point Breeze section where South Philly, where we can't even get the tiller around the corner because like Philly police don't really, or parking don't really force people parking on the corner. So after 8 o'clock at night, people are parking on the corner, and you can't bring the tower ladder in, And then in Philly, we got these stagecoach streets. They're basically as wide as twice as wide as somebody's doorway, average interior door, inside outside door, and front door, say, and you can't fit trucks. You can hardly fit most medic units down there, let alone a ladder truck or an engine. And that's where first an engine may have to do what they call 3-inch to the bag, and bag of 1.75 inch, 150 foot, and 3-inch to the bag. Yeah.
Have you had to put up the 50 yet since you've been there?
Oh no. I mean, you know what? That's a topic. People like to neglect that thing, because it's definitely something I think like people should be cognizant of. I beg my crew all the time, let's go through the 45, let's go through the 50. I had a 45 across the river. Let's go through the 50. It's it's good team building skill. And one thing about, man, I got to see in Philly, you got to learn how to hold ladder. I mean, it's just tight. Power lines are tight. I've been at fires already where I'm getting pissed off. I'm like, you gotta be how to. It's not the power lines. You have just under the third floor, just above the second floor, the fiber. And a typical row home in Philly, it's probably multiple dwelling. Definitely a 3-story. It's probably got at least 3 apartments in, And like the fiber is like you got like probably like less than a 20 foot by a width of a sidewalk's what? 5 feet to put a ladder up, especially if you got to throw a 35 or a 28. Because like that's my go-to, the 28, because I know I can get that to the third floor sill, or still throw it to the second floor, And it's just what a challenge, like Center City, Philly, and even South Philly, like the power lines and the fiber, fiber from the Verizon, all that, like the cable fiber, and that stuff you don't have to worry about getting electrocuted, but it compromises your ladder, especially if you're doing it by yourself. You need somebody helping you, or do like a tip first.
Yeah, and once you hit it, it's just enough.
Well, we did that a couple of times drilling. Like I'm glad the guys where I went, ladder fighter, already knew that. Like, hey, tip first with the ladder. Pull it up against the side of the building and slide it up. And then one thing is nice about brick ordinary construction, it's not like the aluminum siding where it'll get caught. If you do tip first, you can slide it right up the brick wall. So
that's a great tip, right
yeah.
There.
Oh, yeah.
And what I always tell people to do with wires is, because sometimes you got cable, you got phone, then you got your power, is that if they look from the street, especially if you got fire blowing out a window, a new firefighter, easy to get confused. Always look at the house first at the weatherhead and then look back. And it's easy to tell, okay, that's my power. Below that is my telephone and my cable. Where if you start from the street and you're just looking at everything, it just looks like wires. But if you start from that weatherhead and you look back and say, okay, that's my twisted wire, that's the power. Below that, I got no problem. One thing with the 50, I just want to, you got 5 guys, so you could probably get it no problem. In New Haven, when I first got on the truck, if we had to put up the 50, we were putting it up with 4 people, and you would have companies that were doing, in New Haven most of the time, if you weren't on the first or second due engine, you weren't doing anything because they were aggressive companies. They were putting out the fire. Yeah. So all these other companies would be walking down the street, watching you kill yourself, try to get up a 50, and they wouldn't help you. So finally, I figured out that if you say on the radio, truck 4 to command, I need another company to put my 50 up. Now the battalion chief's thinking, it kind of puts them in a box. They have to react, and they'll give you a company, because there's always companies that aren't doing anything.
Yep.
So yeah. But if you don't ask, they'll walk right by you. So I found that was a great tip, is to simply ask. Same thing on the engine in New Haven when I was an engine boss. If I was stretching a 2.5, even though we had total of 4, I'd get on the radio and tell the battalion chief, I'm stretching to 2.5. I need an additional company to get my line in place.
Right.
And then that made the battalion chief give me a company. If I didn't ask for it, guess what? I'm not getting it. So,
yeah.
The radio's a good tool. Do you got some search and some tips? Because this is fire engineering. This is training. I'll start off with one, and then we'll go to you. So if you got a fire, even in an apartment that's 2 stories or a row house, you got a fire going really good on the first floor. I've seen firefighters make the mistake of when they're going up the stairs to try to make a determination of what the conditions are on the second floor before they get to the top of the stairs. No matter how hot that top of the staircase is, you have to eat it and just get off the landing, get to the side, because you're climbing up a chimney.
That's where the heat's coming up. Yeah.
So if you're going up and you got a good fire on the first floor and you're assigned to search, don't make that determination at the top 3 stairs and say, it's too hot up here. I've seen that. I've seen plenty of people. I'm like, get up and get off the landing.
Every time, like when I was being arrested in Canada, that's what I thought of right away. Like when I got to say, look, just get up there and just, find a room, find a door, find a means of egress, and of course, once you pass that initial threshold, that you're right there at the chimney coming up, should be getting a lot cooler for you. If it don't, back off, go find a window. Like, to me, like searching, like go find means of egress. Don't worry too much about searching, and especially if you got the engine company does their job. You find a window, you can hear or tell, or the boss is talking on the radio. Start banging windows, closing doors if you have to, but you won't have to if engine company's got it in check. Banging windows, smoke lifts up the smoke. You don't have to do like fire one and get down and crawl on your knees necessarily, unless of course like you got like a bunch of toys or clothing. Like it's good to get on your knees and start searching, get under the bed. If you got a lot of clutter, it's good to get on your hands and knees and search. You do a lot better job than standing, especially at night when it's not much light. But like definitely, if there's a lot of clutter in the room, get down and search. Get on your hands and knees and search.
Absolutely, it's tough to find some if the conditions are deteriorating, and even when the engine's there, I'm okay with shutting the door to the room, because when you take the windows, the room's going to lift so much quicker and help facilitate that clean search. And then you're kind of in your own little area of refuge. You come back and you leapfrog to the next room. If you know that the engine's flowing water, then you leave that door open as you go to the next room. But especially if you're searching above the fire, that gives you your area. If something goes wrong, I mean, hell, you were in Camden where the engines just stop working. You get a frozen hydrant. You get something that goes wrong. A line burns through. You shut that door to do that search. You're in the area. Now you come back, you open the door, you take a look. I don't think firefighters close doors enough. It's a good habit to get into. Because if you look at case studies and, where firefighters have to jump out of the windows, a lot of times they went by a door that could have been closed, but they just didn't think of it at the time because we're not thinking of that.
You go up there, find your doors, find your windows, and then get your orientation from there. Where I'm at, and as you can hear what the engine company's doing, like by the sound of hose line, and you can tell all the time everything. Your mask is everything in front of you is turning instead of dark, a little bit of white haze. Yeah, there's your steam. We're doing good. Lights start banging windows, or if you're a boss, he yells, "All right, start clearing windows," And you're find out where you're going to bail if you need to. Where's your sometimes I'm sure you've been in, single family dwellings or row homes and all, and there's no doors. It's like whoa, that's how a lot of poor people live. It's just they don't have any doors, or they're stuck with clutter open. You can't close them or open, and that's a little bit of concern. Be mindful of your engine company with the statuses.
Yeah, and what do you call it? You could have a door and you could just simply, because clutter, not be able to close it, or no door there at all, and keep that in mind in VES. I'm actually curious on your opinion on this. I teach when you're doing 2 people VES, even if you're going to use that as your search part to continue. I always say one person, the first person that comes in that window, they sweep the floor, get to the door, shut the door, as if they can't shut the door, or as soon as they shut the door, then call the other person in. Because if things go bad and you get 2 people in there, now you got to worry about the other guy getting out on the ladder, where if things are really nasty, just get in there and shut the door and then call the person in. However, if you go in and you find a victim before you hit the door, call your partner in. High risk, high reward. Call your partner in. Go try to find the door, because you may not be able to find the door or close the. I mean, you might
Yeah.
not be able to close the door. It might not be there, and now you're going to need that second firefighter to lift the person up.
Yep.
What's your take on that?
Oh, what, removing a firefighter or a civilian out a window?
No, like, what do you call it? You got two people. Do you
Oh
take?
yeah, well you know what, a luxury, like, that's ideal. Like, yeah, you don't want to clutter. Make sure, especially if you're over aggressive guy, make sure before you jump in the window, like, at least look if you can see him inside, or say, is it okay? If not, get out of the way. Like, in Camden, we had a lot of porches, front porches. That's
That's
great.
beautiful.
What a platform, yeah. What a platform for two guys to be up on, And like, so I got that luxury there. But like, yeah, going into a window or even narrow window, yeah, like being clutter, getting up there and make sure things are clear. You can do other things like make sure the window's totally clear when that guy's in there. Pull down the blinds and the shades if he didn't do a good job. But yeah, certainly, like, keep tabs on what his status is.
Absolutely. And then
And you do, Frank. I've seen you do it. Like, you can slide if you're actually up there and your boy's coming out that window. Slide down the ladder. Put your feet and your legs out and slide down the ladder. And he may be coming out head first. And good idea to, like, you can catch him as he's coming out. I know, like, I taught a lot of survival classes, instructing, like, little stuff like that. Like, try and catch a fireman coming out, give him safety come down. But if he's doing the arm lock and slipping over, you still got to clear out of the way. But you can always slide down the ladder yourself.
Yeah, and sometimes they're not going to do the arm lock; they're just going to come out.
Yeah, so I mean, if they're they can't get out there fast enough, they're coming out head first.
And don't put a hose line on them if they're off gassing. Just get them to the bottom of the ladder.
Yeah, we actually in Philly, it's probably on YouTube. Firefighter Sharky, Squad 72. He was up in Northeast Philly. You can probably find it on YouTube, and it's a garden apartment fire. And he comes out the damn window, locking his arm. He did the lock, comes and flung out the window, man. And I think it was 3 floors up. I can't remember. I think it was 3 floors up when he did, because he was telling us about it, and the ceiling started coming down. Like, he went up there. I think I don't know if I think he was with 72s, and even an old boss said to him, like, an old lieutenant or captain, said, "Don't go back there." Well, he goes back there anyway, to the back of the apartment. Ceiling came down on him. All of a sudden, it's filmed. He comes out, and I think, if I remember, I think his gear was off gassing too. I can't remember.
If you have that link and you send it, I'll have Fire Engineering put the link with this show, so people can check
it's on
that
YouTube.
out.
I'll find it. It'll probably come up, no problem. I think it's gay. I can't remember. I know, actually, one fire probably 2 or 3 years ago. It was in probably the Mayfair section of Philly. Guys were coming out of that window, and their gear was off gas, and it was phenomenal. I was like, and them guys at ladder 20, off gas, because I think. What happened to that job? I think they might have had water problems or something. It looked like it was making a knock. When you see it on, I think it was a news helicopter filming it, and looked like it was knocked. Then all of a sudden, you see 2 guys bailing, and I think it was the second. I'll get the link for his second guy. His gear might have been off gas, definitely off gas. You see it, yeah. I'll get both of them.
For our viewers out there, if you don't know the corner trick, definitely, if you're going to start your search VES, definitely use the corner trick. If you're in any bedroom in America and it's the corner bedroom, it doesn't matter whether it's in the front of the house, side of the house, or back of the house. If it's the corner bedroom, as you're climbing up the ladder, if the corner of the house, where the house stops or the apartment stops, when you go in the window, if you move away from that outside corner, so picture yourself, you're on the ladder, you're going up, you look, you got a wall, and then it stops, and that's the corner of the house. When you go in the window and you sweep, and then you belly in to get to that door, move away from that outside corner. And I've yet to find a room where it doesn't hold true. You'll get to the door. Sometimes it's only going to be.
I learned that from you. I remember you saying, I was sitting in one class, you said that, and I was like, and I was actually where one of my friends from a company I was training with, and he was like, "Oh, that's a good tip. You never thought of that." A friend of mine, he's now a deputy chief in the Mount Laurel Fire Department. A pretty good progress, and he was like, "Oh, that's a good tip." I'm like, "Yeah, that's some good shit right there."
Now, Howard Blythe taught me it, and then I just stole it. Now everybody gives me credit for it. And
really? Okay.
It was Howard, but everywhere, sometimes it's only a foot, sometimes it's 2 foot, sometimes it's 5 or 6 feet, depending on the room, and that might mean the difference between you closing the door or not closing the door. So I always thought that was
Yeah,
really
well, you know, if been in a search and the conditions aren't good, right, because the engine company ain't there or don't have it in check, or you're, you know, going in targeted search for a known possible victim in a bedroom, yeah, you gotta get to that door.
all right. So what about operating inside? What tips do you have? For example, I've seen some truck companies come up and find the fire and shut the door, but then they don't tell anybody where the fire is. So
Oh,
if you go up and you're the truck and you shut the door to the fire, have
yeah,
the courtesy to be a gentleman. Go back, find the engine company, grab the officer or the
yeah.
pipe person and say, I shut the door, come with me. Just
But
because
I
you
like,
shut the door, your job's not over, and then
yeah,
you can continue sleeping after that.
when I was a boss in Camden, I liked it. Would get up there and radiate out to, you know, you radiate out chief. Everybody say, you know, right, got two bedrooms going, one bed, you know, one bedroom door, you know, going, you know, can't close the door, door's closed, whatever, you know, for all cases, everybody hears it. Yeah, that's at least transmit, or yeah, go back, tell the engine company. Most of the time they're up your ass anyway, right?
Yeah, usually they're somewhere there, but I found it just
Yeah,
so helpful. You close the door, go grab the pipe person, and just drag them, and then continue your search. It only takes a second instead of leaving them trying to find the door
yeah,
where you shut it because you know where it's at.
yep,
What
yeah.
what other? We're getting right at the witching hour here. What other tips do you have that you want to give to our viewers tonight, Danny Stratton?
Oh well, you know, working above a fire force surgeon, you know the status of your engine company. Make sure you know, communicate the location and extent of the fire, and ideally be in a buddy system. But sometimes in certain departments, like I know, really technically, in ladder companies in Philly, the pack guy's really doing a search for himself, and depending on your officer, how aggressive he is, and maybe he's an all overtime boss and he's not as aggressive, or you know he's held up with something else. You know, maybe up to yourself. You know, make sure you maintain your orientation. Find a way. You know, find a means of egress in the door to protect you. You know, find a window. Once you find that window, first think to yourself, do I want to open this yet? You know, what's the status of the engine company? If need be, get on the radio and find out. You know, there should be, you know, certain signs. You should be able to hear what it sounds like. Right before your eyes, you can see the darkness turn a little bit of white, little stuff like that. You know, pop the window, find doors, you know. Also, egress, like make sure, look for any ground ladders outside that you can bail out on, especially in Philly. In Philly, they actually put the uh, high power lines up on the buildings. Yeah, I should probably maybe I kind of send you a few pictures. You know, like on yeah, it's wild. You know, and like I think like what if you had to bail out and you got power lines right there that are just under, especially like if you're on a third floor, it may possibly underneath the third floor window. Most of them are above on the top floor, most. But I've seen somewhere like there's electrical like electric poles. Like why they're not out front on electric poles. They're on the row buildings in the rear. It's wild, wild, and scary. You know, if you have to bail out and make sure like small windows, harder to bail out of. You know, try to clear them as best you can. Like bathroom windows can be very tight with as far as bailing out. That's a different bailout technique. You might want to like you put your hook more underneath it. You can't really put it to the side of you if you're going out a small window like a bathroom. And when you go out, and that's why I know guys wearing harnesses. Like I prefer to wear mine as tight as possible because what if you're going out a small window? Run risk of pulling yourself out of your harness. So it's good to make sure your harness is on pretty tight. I'll admit I'm a little loose nowadays. I used to wear mine real tight for that reason, and but it's certainly if you're getting dressed in the truck, it makes it hard putting it on, especially if you're slacking on your diet. But like going out beyond that small narrow windows, it can be a challenge, right?
Absolutely. And you made just a point about reality. Sometimes, we like the buddy system, but sometimes you are going to end up searching
Mm-hmm.
alone, especially depending on how your experience is. And there's also the other side of that coin where you have people, they look like they're going to the prom when they're searching. For example, if you come to a bathroom and you're with a partner, you don't want to search that with two people.
Right.
Same thing with that hallway. If you go to the hallway and you're on the interior truck and the engine is behind you and you got fire, you don't need your partner or another firefighter crawling down the hallway with you to shut the door. No, tell them to stay there for a second. Go
Mhm.
shut the door. That way, if you can't close the door burns through or falls into the room. It's easier to just one person to quickly crawl to get out of that hallway than two people. So just because they say you got to have the buddy system, I like that you could have communications with the person. You don't got to be touching each other,
Yeah.
making a search.
Fire
A
one,
lot of
sir.
if one of you got a camera, and you're
Mhm.
searching a bedroom, I prefer one person just stays at the door with the camera, directs the search, and then goes to the next room. You save air, but you don't have to be like in love with each other and right on
Yeah.
top of each other. Just be able to communicate. And ideally, you want to work with a partner, but that's not always realistic. Sometimes you may find yourself operating alone, especially depending on your SOPs. This is it for Politics and Tactics tonight. Hopefully, we'll see everybody at FDIC in April. Danny Stratton, honor to have you on here. As I said, the toughest firefighter I've ever seen, without a doubt. Great instructor, great firefighter. I wish you all the luck and success in the Philadelphia Fire
Amen.
Department. I know
Best
you're
job
going
in
to
the
do
world.
well. You got the right attitude. You're always welcome back on this show. Hopefully, we'll have you back at FDIC teaching again because you're a great instructor and you're good to have a beer with. So I salute you and I hope all the best. And our hearts and prayers are out for the Camden firefighter who lost their
Oh, yes.
lives.
God bless Howard and his family. Howard Bennett and his family.
Everybody be a little careful. So I'm going to give you the last word of the night, whatever you want to say, and then we're out.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me. Hope your family and your son, how's he doing? Good, right?
He's doing good. He helped build the studio. So this is the first show with the new studio. So I had him working this weekend. And
Oh, I
drinking
saw
beer.
it on social media. Yeah. I noticed that. I thought it was his. I think, but hey, stay safe. God bless. And as a good friend says to me, keep on fire trucking.
Keep on fire trucking. May the fire gods
That's
be
not
good.
mine. That's not mine. Oh, that's mine. May the fire gods be with you. Yeah.
I know you've been saying that for years. May the fire gods be with
May the
you.
fire
So,
gods be with you and keep on fire trucking.
so that's it for Politics and Tactics tonight. Hope to see everybody at FDIC.